Trevor Lawrence is going to be our first must start for week 6. Can you believe it's already week 6?
I don't want to talk about
Trevor
it.
Lawrence was very, very good in week 1 against Indianapolis, which isn't saying much, I guess, because it's the Colts defense, but he did have 19 points. He did have 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Colts have been bad against quarterbacks all season long. And the nice thing about being in the same division, it means that this week he plays the Colts again. How about that? Even this past week, I mean, Tannehill was better than the fantasy points would have shown. His stats were even better than the fantasy points would have shown. Tannehill has mostly been dead this season. And against the Colts, he mostly dead. But against the Colts, he looked somewhat dead instead of mostly dead. So
slightly alive.
Yeah, he's actually slightly alive, we would say. Trevor Lawrence, yeah, we know. Trevor Lawrence has struggled so far this year, and it's made it really hard for him to be startable in fantasy football leagues, given that he's not really producing as a top 12 quarterback right now. So unless you're in super deep leagues, you're probably looking at Trevor Lawrence and be like, what do I even do with this guy? I'm going to start CJ Stroud over him. Actually, Trevor Lawrence continues to add a couple of points rushing each game, which gives him a safer floor. When you're looking at his yards, 42, 12, 26, and 21. So you're talking about anywhere from 1 to 4 points rushing. When you're talking about somebody, and especially a quarterback that produces at a very high fantasy level, that little bit of rushing upside, that little bit of Justin Herbert rushing upside that we always like to say, what we used to not say Joe Burrow used to get, but then he did, but now he's not again this year. That is actually something that Trevor Lawrence has right now. So when you look at his long-term production this year in fantasy football, you might even ask yourself, why is he not producing the way that he should be? The main problem is going to be touchdowns. And believe it or not, touchdowns are even a little bit volatile for quarterbacks as well. Last year, he had 30 touchdowns combined. If you remember last year, he actually had quite a few rushing touchdowns, especially later in the season. I remember getting all those sleeper alerts, and I was like, I like that because I had a lot of Trevor Lawrence. Still do.
You like that?
You like that? This year, he's on pace for 17 touchdowns. So the touchdown rate has slowed down. Again, you have the rushing ability. You have the weapons now with Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk. But he hasn't really been good. Why he's a must-start this week? Again, we believe in Trevor Lawrence because of the rushing upside. We also believe that Trevor Lawrence will look like the greatest quarterback of all time against the Indianapolis Colts. Given that the Colts secondary has been terrible, the Colts have given up a ton of points to quarterback this year. They consistently make bad quarterbacks look good, and Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. So Trevor Lawrence should look great. We expect him to have a big week against our Colts.
Yeah, and we're going to stay in the same game here on the same side of the ball, on the same team with Calvin Ridley. And Calvin Ridley finally had another good game. Thank goodness for all of you Ridley truthers going into this year. Y'all started freaking out, started selling him low.
I want to say something because I'm guaranteed, start Ridley? No duh. You know how many start-sit questions we got with Ridley in them last week?
Yeah,
we do this a lot. We know what people are thinking. Calvin Ridley has been a fringe starter for people, so that's why he's in this video.
Look, I would go as far as saying that Calvin Ridley is a lock to score at least 20 points this week.
Jeez.
I mean, look at the points that everyone scored against the Colts secondary, and this is the point. The Colts secondary, we tell you guys this every single week because it holds true. It will continue to hold true all year. Okay? You can say that we're not being biased with this. We're being honest with our own team. Their secondary sucks.
It's so bad.
It is so bad. It's not even funny. Honestly, I don't understand why any team runs the ball a single time against them. Why would you ever run the ball on a 3rd and 2 against the Colts secondary? It makes no sense.
I would literally just not run it.
Yeah, the last 5 weeks, dude. Oh my gosh, this is unreal. Calvin Ridley, week 1, he had 8 receptions on 11 targets, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Nico Collins, 7 receptions, 9 targets, 146 yards, and a touchdown.
Bingo.
Zay Flowers, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 48 yards. Puka Nacua, 10 targets, 9 receptions, and a touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins, 11 targets, 8 receptions, on 140 yards. What other argument do we have to make here, guys?
I think we stop there. Like, legitimately.
Move on.
The argument speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Alexander Madison's going to be next. Alexander Mattison is one of those inefficient running backs that hopefully will score some points through volume. And we get it. Like, what? Cam Akers is there. Did you see him last week? Yeah, we saw him.
Whatever, man.
Look, and you're trying to start the guys that get a lot of volume in their good matchups and bench them in their bad ones. And for Mattison, this is a very good matchup. The Bears are 4th this year in the most running back points allowed. 4th. I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise. The Chicago Bears defense, we're continually targeting that defense every week for players to start against because their defensive coordinator, remember, he just kind of left.
Yeah.
So, and not to mention, they've been fairly bad. Now, luckily, the Chicago Bears have looked like less of a dumpster fire the last couple of weeks. But
Justin Fields will be the MVP. You don't have to worry about that. Bears are actually going to make a push for the Super Bowl.
I figured he would, actually. But with Mattison, his snap count has been dropping, and that's been part because of Cam Akers. So if he can't get it done this week, it's probably going to be hard to trust him after this week. But we do think this would be probably the last serviceable matchup for Alexander Mattison. We've told you that we're selling Alexander Mattison. We've been selling him for a long while now. When you're looking at his snap count in the last 5 weeks, it was 73, 75, 80, 68, and then 51. So again, as Cam Akers gets involved in there, they're clearly trying to make this more of a committee backfield because they saw Alexander Mattison, the lead back, and said, yeesh. And I don't really blame them. But again, you're playing the Chicago Bears defense. You're playing a team that has given up the 4th most running back points this year. We are comfortable starting Alexander Mattison and most players.
Yeah, and lucky for y'all, y'all Madison owners, you get to play the Bears twice with Alexander Mattison.
It's that division
so
thing
you guys are so blessed. Oh, and the Packers. That's pretty good. Garrett Wilson's going to be our next guy here. Coming off a highly disappointing performance against the Broncos. This sucked. We had Garrett Wilson as a must start along with Breece Hall. We hit on Breece Hall. We were wrong on Garrett Wilson. Zach Wilson's performance kind of came down to earth again. He had a great game against the Chiefs, an okay game against the Chiefs. And Garrett Wilson against the Broncos defense, which we expected him to ball out against, he just didn't get much. He had 7 targets, 3 receptions. Granted, those targets, what's the quality of those targets? Not very good, not very catchable for 54 yards. He's still making the most out of 3 receptions. Like for the volume that he got, very impressive. People may see Philadelphia on the schedule and worry, be like, definitely starting Garrett Wilson. We're going to double down on this prediction again with Garrett Wilson. I understand it's very risky, and if you're not comfortable starting Garrett Wilson and you have much better options that have been more consistent up to date, then go for it. Go for starting those other guys. But again, bye weeks are here. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers that are out of the game, and you're going to be forced to probably start Garrett Wilson or someone else who has a lesser ceiling. We're going to say go with Garrett Wilson. Philly's run defense has been excellent this season, but their pass defense has been shaky to say the least. I mean, you could put them on par with the Colts secondary when it comes to a fantasy football perspective and the points that they've allowed this season. They're giving up the 3rd most points to wide receivers right now. The 3rd most. That's a lot. The Jets will likely have to throw the ball enough that Zach Wilson could get eaten alive. It's absolutely a possibility. But Wilson will probably still get his points from the passing game. I think Philadelphia is smart. Philadelphia is good. They're probably going to win this game by a significant margin. If they want to win this game, I would assume defensively that they say, hey, let's put a lot of pressure on Zach Wilson. Let's not let them get anything in the run game, and let's force Zach Wilson, the worst player on that offense, to make the mistake in the passing game.
All right, let's move over to the Dolphins running backs. They're going to be must-starts for us this week. This one's a little bit tricky because it came out today that Devon Achane, they're recording on Monday, by the way, that Devon Achane is actually banged up. He's questionable, and I even saw that Raheem Mostert changed to questionable. So this may be something to where you're starting Jeff Wilson Jr. So we're going to say this. Insert running back here because, you know, if you do have Devon Achane or Raheem Mostert, you're probably going to be starting them anyways. We get that. But now there is more of a question, and we had to highlight that this is a dream matchup for them. Whoever plays.
A dream.
Carolina is dead last in rushing defense EPA.
That's saying a lot.
Dead last.
There's a lot of bad defenses out there right now.
A ton. I mean, this is the year of some pretty poor defenses.
Very.
I mean, the only 2 teams that even come close are the Broncos and the Giants, who those Miami running backs have already torn apart. They already tore apart both of those teams this year, and they're playing a worse rushing defense statistically than those 2 teams. So that's good enough reason already. Again, we're starting these 2 pretty much everywhere this week, and if you were thinking of selling them, if you're thinking of selling Raheem Mostert, even if you think, you know, I think Devon Achane is going to take over that role. If you were thinking of selling Mostert, don't do it after this week. If you're like, okay, I think Devon Achane is going to be injury prone, don't sell Devon Achane until after this week.
Yeah.
We're not advocating to sell either of them. But, again, if you're going to do that, you have to wait till after this week because, again, this is a dream matchup for them. The Carolina Panthers have a terrible run defense, and whoever starts, whether that's Mostert, if it's Mostert and Jeff Wilson, start both of them. If it's Achane and Jeff Wilson, start both of them. If it's just Jeff Wilson and then you have Ahmed, start Mostert, and then maybe think about wavering Ahmed. So, again, it's going to be Dolphins running back this week. This is going to be a very, very good matchup for them.
Yeah, Panthers fans, I'm sorry that you have our old coach. Zay Flowers is going to be the next guy that's up here. Flowers' targets have gone up and down so far this season, and we had Flowers as a must-start this week. It was iffy. It was okay. We kind of predicted more of a breakout, a higher producing week, but the Steelers' defense was better than expected, and we should have known better in a division rival game, especially of the caliber of the Ravens versus the Steelers. There's so much history in that game. But he still had 11 targets, 5 receptions, a couple of balls that didn't go in his favor in that game, and he could have hauled them in, but he didn't. Would have been a lot more fantasy points. But he still, I mean, did you see that like Madden play that he had?
Where he
the one on the sideline where
yes.
he oh my gosh.
It was sick.
That was like Lamar Jackson-esque.
Yes. Joystick, baby.
Joystick. We love to see those 11 targets with Odell Beckham Jr. back.
Mm-hmm.
We never thought that Odell Beckham Jr. would do really much in this offense at all. He was massively overpaid. Not taking victory laps there at all. He's only been back for 1 week. But so far, it's looking pretty good for Zay Flowers. He seems to be the clear alpha there, even, dare I say, over Mark Andrews.
No.
Yeah.
11 targets. I mean, it's hard to argue with that, man.
Yeah. The Ravens play the Titans this week, who have allowed the 7th most points to the wide receiver position this season. See Joshua Downs, a rookie wide receiver this past week who tore up the Titans secondary. The Colts knew they would have to pass the ball, and they actually effectively ran the ball, which I was surprised with. But look, Josh Downs, 15 points with a lot less volume than Flowers is going to get consistently in the Ravens offense. Very optimistic about what he's going to be able to do, honestly, for the rest of the season.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back from the grave, Dallas Goedert.
Hey!
Goedert, I mean, pretty much more than doubled his yardage from the entire season in one game. One game in week 5. You saw the game. I mean, he had 9 targets. He held in 8 of those targets. He had 117 yards and a touchdown. So can we trust this? Can we trust Dallas Goedert moving forward?
Yes.
We're going to say, yes, we can. Obviously, he's not going to get 117 yards every week, but Goedert is good enough on a very, very good offense and a very high-octane offense with a good quarterback. He's going to be way better than he was in the first 4 weeks. I mean, I think this was a classic case of people seeing the small sample size and saying, yeah, Dallas Goedert is dead. He sucks. And in reality, this is probably the answer between what's the real Dallas Goedert is probably going to be
in between.
In between what you saw last week and in the first 4 weeks. But we expect this to even out, and we do think that he's going to be better as the season goes on. He's going to be a must start this week because the Eagles are playing the Jets, and the Jets have been very good against wide receivers this year if you've been paying attention. But they are dead last against tight ends this year. They are dead last, 32nd in the league. So while the Jets defense has been very good, while they've been good guarding wide receivers, we don't trust them against tight ends. And when you take Dallas Goedert's momentum coming from his last game, when you take the fact that the first 4 games were probably more of a fluke than anything, when you take the matchup into consideration, when you take even the scheming that looked a little bit better for the Eagles last week, Dallas Goedert for us is going to be a must-start this week. Even though he has not been producing as a top 12 tight end this year, we are definitely starting him in all of our leagues this week.
Absolutely. Another guy that we're starting every week, he's a non-negotiable at this point. You've got to give him his respect, is Adam Thielen. What a year for Adam Thielen so far. And I'm not going to take a full victory lap yet, but just let's give me a high five.
I mean, it's 5 worthy. It's 5 worthy.
Feels good. We were drafting a lot of Adam Thielen in fantasy football this year because of the upside that we believed he offered playing with Bryce Young, and really, honestly, the only legitimate receiving threat there. Yeah, we're excluding Jonathan Mingo from that conversation, but granted, a lot of Thielen's production has come in garbage time. But let's make no mistake about it. Carolina has played and will be playing in a lot of garbage time this year.
It's pretty much all of their games.
They're
every quarter.
Very not good, to put it nicely. And they've got a long way to go.
They have a long journey up that mountain.
Very long journey up that mountain. This week, the Panthers play the Dolphins. They allow the 11th most points to wide receivers so far this year. Just keep firing it up, man. Keep firing up Adam Thielen in your starting wide receiver slot every single week in fantasy football. You cannot go wrong with this guy. He is not touchdown dependent because of the volume that he's been getting. After week 1, which was kind of a dud, 9 targets, 14 targets, 8 targets, and 13 targets. That is wide receiver 1 level. That's wide receiver 1 caliber. That's why Adam Thielen is currently a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football right now. I know it's gross. I know it's not attractive. I know there's nothing good looking about it at all. But fantasy points, I'll take them where they are right now. I'll take them where they're offered. And Adam Thielen is definitely one of those guys.
There's a lot of them found in Adam Thielen right now.
Yep.
All right, those are our must-starts for this week. Do us a huge favor. Make sure you drop a like on this video. And if you play fantasy football, subscribe. Helps us out a ton. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you later.